audience. Welcome to the 2020 series. I am Liz Hinlein, the creative director of film and cinematography at the New York Film Academy and a filmmaker. The 2020 series is sponsored by New York Film Academy, and it is a series where we have great creative conversations with visionaries, 20 minutes of conversation, and then we're going to have 20 minutes of questions from the global audience, which is you. So please write in. We'll try to get to as many as we can at that time. And I'm so thrilled to announce that today I have amazing creative visionaries, artists, filmmakers, Mark Pellington and Sarah Pirozek. Hi guys, can we see me? Are you seeing me? We're good? Oh, awesome, yeah. Great, hi.
Hi.
So my,
how are you guys?
Hi Mark, hi Sarah. Happy bunkering wherever you are. So I consider you guys both amazing artists and using film as your medium as an artist. And I just wanted to get your feedback on that. Is that true? Is that something that that you think about?
Mark, why don't you go first? You're our guest.
Well, I don't think I ever called myself an artist till somebody else did, because I started self-taught and just kind of fell into it years ago. I was just said I'm going to keep going until somebody tells me to go home and go to Baltimore and pack your bags. And believe me, later in years, enough critics will question whether you should continue to do it. But I think in my core, I'm a filmmaker, not a director. Cameron Crowe taught me that. There's filmmakers and directors. And I think filmmakers can be storytellers, image makers, creators, expressionists. And our purpose that you realize in life is we are here to create, and sometimes it's to make people feel less alone. Sometimes it's to sell something. Sometimes it's to entertain, or some combination thereof. So every opportunity, every job, every project, whether it's 10 seconds or 2 hours, becomes something that you just work with and take individually.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, you came out of, I feel like you came out of fine art. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, no, I started as a painter. I went to Chelsea to be a painter. People in my family are all painters, grandparents, etc. So I was brought up with the idea that you could actually survive as an artist. And then when I was at art school, I was like, this wasn't enough. It wasn't telling the story fully enough for me. I was really excited. I was in a band, of course I was in a punk band, and Mark was probably in a band too. And,
yes.
At that time we were all doing different things. And I found that filmmaking, and I also call myself a filmmaker, is such a beautiful collaborative art form, because you're dealing with music, you're dealing with editing, you're dealing with the visualization of it. I mean, I love talking to art department. I love talking to everyone. Everyone is such a family, and you all, however dysfunctional some people are in it, it's kind of a beautiful mess sometimes that you get to pull together and make into something. So yeah, definitely an artist. And then when I came to the States, I went to the Whitney Independent Study Program that was more of a theoretical sort of fine arts based thing. But Catherine Bigelow was an alum there before me, obviously, but yeah, for sure.
I'm making more stuff that's probably art or collages, or sold a few photographs, or make an abstract dance film that really has no regard for much, how it's more esoteric, so a smaller audience, right? So keeping one foot in the commercially narrative-minded, plot-driven systemology, which can be from indie film to Hollywood movies to TV, is kind of like the sun and all the other planets rotating around it, whether it's a little 2-minute content piece or a reality show or whatever. There's so many different satellites and methods of communicating and being artistic. you know, and combining the visual mediums are so varied. And one piece I always tell any young filmmaker artist to read is something that the Directors Guild magazine publishes once a year. And Elia Kazan, the famous filmmaker who did On the Waterfront, has a thing called What Makes a Director. And it's literally, it talks about understanding psychology and history and architecture and painting. And the more versed you are in humanities and the varieties of different arts, color theory, you know, everything influences you and makes you a better filmmaker. That and experience just make you realize that you don't know anything and just to keep going.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great article.
Yeah, so you can even find it and post it on a link, you know, to people. It's very informative.
That's amazing. So we all grew up in the music video when music videos were the lush, fun fantasy land. Did that inform your finding your voice at that time? 2 questions. And does that inform your work now?
Absolutely. I made my first music video in, my God, before you guys were born. I mean that in the best way. In 1985, I made my first music video for $3,000 budget. Next week, I'm making a video for $4,000. I've made 110 videos in my career, from $1 million budget to $50 budget. I love music. I love the abstraction of visuals. I like them almost in a way more than movies, although Sarah's right. In a film that you were really creatively engaged in, you could do everything in it, but something about music videos is still close to my heart. And I think probably the best stuff I've ever made are probably my videos. So I agree. Love them. And I think that it's a form. I'm publishing a book next year that's kind of it's about videos and making things in different mediums and different platforms and how it's changed over nearly 30 years. And I think it's a form that doesn't really get its due. And it's, you know, it's something that I just love it. I love the merger of ideas and music, and you know, you just have to be very scrappy in how you make them. And I constantly inspired by looking at a site called Video Static, where you see every video released, and Steve Gottlieb curates it, and you can be like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't know any of the directors that come out now, but it's a great way to learn and be inspired.
That's amazing. Yeah. Your video you did for YouTube with the running of the bulls, that
Buffalo.
The buffalo. Exactly. So at the time when I saw it, it just blew my mind as to what art and commerciality can be.
Because it wasn't meant to be a video.
Tell us about it.
It wasn't. I had done stuff for the Zoo TV tour. I had made 3 songs worth of projections and text, you know, text pieces, or, you know, because I had a show that we had worked on called Buzz, which was this collage kind of thing. And Zoo TV was kind of aping what Buzz was, which was the internet was just starting. So Zoo TV was just like, look at this multi-screen universe. So when we made a background projection for the song One, it was just buffalo. Another screen was like a flower desaturated, kind of a loop. Another one was like text and the word one in different languages. So on 50 screens in the Madison Square Garden, it was amazingly powerful. And they needed a video for it. And they had made one already and they didn't like it. So we took my footage that we had treated and created for the projection and shot the band and intercut it. And they're like, we don't like it. And they said, well, why don't we just release the thing with the buffalo?
Loved
And I was
it.
like, great. So it was kind of, at the time, it was like an anti-video. It was like 6 shots, slow, no band in it. And all it was like a Bill Viola. It was like an art piece. It's like wallpaper. But it
Totally.
still holds up because it's a great song. And you put yourself into it. There's no personality. There's no, so many videos now are like the artist singing. They're like commercials for the artist. They're like little brand things. But that was just like purely abstract.
It was
Amazing.
wonderful. I know Liz told me that when we were talking about it, when we were going to invite you to talk, and both of us said we cried when we watched that video the first time.
Because it's a
So
beautiful song.
it's a
It's
beautiful video.
song.
It's
And
a
the video
beautiful
really,
song and a beautiful video. It's you know, I came from a experimental film background. That was my degree, experimental filmmaking, when I came to New York, and seeing something like that was so you know, it feels accidental in a way, in a beautiful way, but it's so in the intention. And when you're talking about young filmmakers, we were talking earlier about, you know, young filmmakers reading the trades and everything, which is great and fine. But if you can't get the emotion of what you're trying to translate through, you've failed, I think. And in that video of 5 shots, the emotion was off the charts.
Because the music leads. And that's why, like, at MTV, I was trained, even making promos, 30 seconds and then a minute. Even when we did Buzz, which was a 30-minute show, I would do the music first. Music, sound, everything first, then cut picture on top of it. So in a way, you're letting the content and emotion lead you. I remember when I made my first movie, it was like sound after. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, right? So it's like you're grafting music and emotion into a novel versus a music video, which is more like painting, where you're coming from within. So we had an old piece of stock footage. I said, get me some footage of a buffalo. And we just slowed it down and made it out of focus and made it black and white, and just kept on getting getting closer to it. So the rhythm of it slowing down, you know, you notice the footsteps are kind of in rhythm with the drum beat. And that was just me and the editor sitting there and like slower, weirder, but the music's cranking, and you're like, so you say like, that's it. You know, you're just saying, all right, it felt good. It feels,
When you write, do you write to music? If you're writing a script, do you have music playing in the background for your scenes?
sometimes when I'm stream of consciousness, like generating ideas, I do, but not when I'm writing scripts. And I don't like scripts that put music in them. Like the opening strain of Iggy Pop's Passengers, I'm like, yeah, but you know what? We don't have Iggy Pop here. So maybe if scripts, I've often thought scripts should be on links that you could like hit the you know, like a little tab that the song could play as you're reading it. I know that they're doing that because when I talk to Powerhouse, when they're talking about like publishing the digital version of the book, they're saying that they can embed links into it. So if somebody's reading it digitally, they can just click, you know, the way you would do on a website. You just click and see it. So if scripts were that way, where you could hear the song with it, but again, you run the risk because if somebody doesn't like the song, you check out of the narrative flow.
Sarah, do you write with music in the background, or does that influence you with your like Squatter's Handbook project?
Yes, I mean, kind of like Mark, I do this thing that I call montaging. You know, I'll sit there and I'll pull images and I'll look at old film and I'll watch something and I'll read a poem and I'll play loads of music. And then I put my collage in my head or on the wall or in some virtual space. And then I'm very quiet. Then I'm quiet typing, writing.
So you let it fill you, and you let it sort of immerse into your subtext and your subconscious, and then do that.
Like I might be thinking of a song, like, you know, I'm writing about early 80s Brixton, which is very West Indian. It's a particular time, it's a particular place. And I'll be playing in my head Althea and Donna, Uptown Top Ranking, and writing to that rhythm in a way, how the scene would feel.
That's cool.
I'm writing
That's
more
super
and
cool.
more now. I'm writing more and more now, even in fiction, because I don't write that many screenplays, but I'm starting to. Or I'll write stories and find writers to collaborate with, because I don't think dialogue and narrative structure is my strong suit. Theme and character, and and I'm better shaping them with writers. But I use an app now called Rev, and there's a million different kinds. I record myself and get the text spit back to me, and then I kind of because my brain, my fingers, I don't know how to type that well. My fingers don't move as fast as my mouth. So I'll just record myself long stretches, and then I'll get the text and start to write around the text. And
That's
I'll do
great.
the voices. Oh, so we go through the street. So the rhythm, the beats, the door closes, the window opens.
Yeah.
She looks back, she turns.
Well,
What
you,
does she say? Right? So I'm kind
yeah,
of seeing it in my head, and I'm like, just record it and then rewrite, edit from your head based on what your brain, it's a little more straight jacking into my brain than going through the process of words.
you were, one thing, oh, can I just mention one thing that I really admired that Mark did years ago, which was the United States of Poetry. I mean, talk about rhythm and atmosphere and creatively tweaking a genre. That was amazing.
Well, all music, all pre-mixed, strip all the audio at the time off of, the Avid was just, the Avid, this was 1995, so the Avid was only a few years old, but we would pre-mix, well, number one, poetry is better than rock lyrics, number one, so you're dealing with heightened language, and had great sound, whether it was songs or ambient score provided by the music supervisor. And then we just pre-mixed it again. So it felt right. We knew each show had to be 26 minutes. Pre-mix it, it feels right. So you'd let a word go, you'd let it feel right, then chop the picture on top of it.
Totally. So do you find that the form now is sort of also influencing your creativity? Because we were talking about Quibbies and how they have a specific form now, just like how music videos had a certain form, 3.5 minutes. Do you feel that that is informing your creative approach?
I think Quibi's idea, Quibi is an app, and their idea is for the shortest attention span person, for somebody between the ages of 18 and 30, that they might want to watch a show, but they don't want to watch it for a half an hour or even 15 minutes, that they want to watch whatever it is, whatever the genre, documentary, narrative, talk show, whatever it is, that they want to watch it in 8 to 10 minute bursts on their phones. So that was the idea. So they generate all this content, and so making it for that, actually making each episode work, when we strung it together as a movie, it really worked because it moved, it flowed together, as opposed to movies. You shoot a movie and oftentimes your first cut of a 115-page script is 3 hours long. And so you're constantly, it's reductive. You're like, what am I getting rid of? What am I getting rid of to get to the length that it should play, which is a little bit under 2 hours? Well, number one, write scripts that are 90 pages, right? Number two, I learned have some shit happen every 8 or 9 minutes for the audience. I don't care what genre it is. Number three, so I think Quibi's idea of structure is interesting. I think the reason that it got screwed over is people like to hate on new things, and you release a mobile-only app in a time when everybody's at home. That's like, selling ice skates on the Titanic, or like, I'm sorry, that's a good idea at the wrong time. And what are they going to do? They had hyped it up, they release it, and people are like, we want to watch this we want to watch this at home, right? On our big screen, because that's what we can do. So the technology has told people what they want. Now the audience will tell you We want to watch it. We want to screen grab it. So I think Quibi's been learning a lot about its platform to telling stories. It was no different. I shot the film no different than I shot my Imagine Dragons video. Emotion, composition, performance, rhythm. I don't discriminate. I make the same stuff no matter what the screen size is.
Quick question for both of you on that creative event. So when you're pitching on a project that's, say, not coming from you, what's your typical go-to? What's your process, and what do you feel comfortable showing? Say for the Quibi project. I don't know. Did you have to pitch on that?
I've done elaborate for movies. I've done spent my own money for elaborate lookbooks with text, with what I'm going to do. I've made sizzle reels for movies and TV shows, like really like pretty elaborate presentations, which come out of, you do those for commercials. 20 years ago, you didn't have to. You could do a phone call with the agency and get a 10-day shoot, boom. But once people started, show me a little scrap, show me a little thing, it became this now where you're overdoing 20-page treatments for a pharmaceutical commercial. For narrative things, so for Quibi, I literally went in with 2 pages of I had 8 images that I collaged on my phone on an app called Pic Collage, and I went with 2 6-image collages, and I said, this is kind of what I see. Because the work itself, I figured like my work will speak for itself, and it was more of a verbal, what was my point of view, what was my take on the story, on the script, and because I understood movies as well as short form, and had made videos and made stuff on the phone, they wanted somebody that could understand the technology, yet also could direct and get, so it was a kind of a weird hybrid. They wanted, and I wasn't the first choice for it. They wanted other people, but I went in and got the job. So you got to do whatever it is to get it.
And what do you think what do you think was the turning point for you, the pivot for you to get the job? Was there something you said? Was there something you showed?
Everybody else passed. No, I honestly, on that one, I really think the 2 producers, Cary Granite and Richard Abate, who first asked me to do it, who when I spoke to them for 10 minutes about the script, and I said, this is a symbolic journey of a girl who wants to die and learns to live, and it was the stages of grief that I kind of designed the movie around. And once they were sold, they fought for me. So I attribute solid producers really, saying this is the guy to do it.
But it sounds like you connected to the story, you connected to the theme. So, and you translated that. I mean, any of the people watching this who are younger filmmakers, the first thing you have to do is don't think about how your shots are going to look or who you're going to have in it. What is the story you want to tell? Read Leos Egri about, the art of dramatic writing. That tells you how to just distill your theme. The movie that I just made, that Mark actually was, very a big part of pushing me to do it and pulling the trigger on it. The first thing I did was I had my montage thing, but then I sat and I talked it through to myself for about a month, pitching my logline to lots of different people until I could get a solid logline, because I knew there was not going to be any extra money, extra time, any extra anything, that it had to be so solid thematically that then I wrote the script. I put all my collaging together, wrote the script, and then pitched it out in the world. But I mean, don't you think, Mark, it's like if you don't have your theme, you're lost.
Yeah, and I think you can, and it's funny because, and I love theme, and I love distilling it into a thesis or the reason. Like Arlington Road the theme was evil exists and evil wins. Pure and simple. And it would depress the shit out of us, but it's like, that's what it was. And in Mothman Prophecies, it was, I believe everyone. That was for me. I have to have my personal way into it to design it. So if I can design it on a completely strange, abstract, obscure, metaphysical level and symbolic level, to design something that even feels then invisible to the audience, if I'm fighting my way into it, I can't do it. Yet interestingly enough, theme isn't enough. I remember when I did this movie, Henry Poole, and the theme I related to, and we won some award. It was semi-faith-based movie. And we went to this award show, and the guy who spoke was kind of a faith-based speaker. And he says, do you know why people go to movies? And he goes, people go to movies for story and character. Story was number one. Character was number two. Theme was down the list. So people don't say, oh, did you see that great movie about survival? No, did you see Castaway? Yes, it's about survival. Right? But it's like a guy is washed ashore and survives and comes back. Right? So you always strip it down to the simplest dramatic question. And I fight this all the time because I think in theme, I think in intention. My brain doesn't think in plot or what if. So as I was telling you before, a guy goes to his vacation home and a family is living there. What happens next? That's a good, only through working in narrative for years and working with writers am I like, just tell me a story. What happens next? I remember Paul Schrader wrote a script for me. And I meet him and I'm talking about, this guy's incredible, right? Raging Bull, Taxi Driver. And I'm talking about a project I want him to write. And I'm beating around the bush, like theme, memory, bullshit. He puts down his fork, he goes, what's the story?
Great.
I take a breath and I say, a woman is floating in a pool. The camera drifts above her. And as she turns to us, we see her green eyes and pull back and see blood coming out from her shower cap, streaming. Image, story. I told him the story. And he puts down his fork and he goes, that's a good story. So it's that point that I've had to, this was years ago, go against my nature and say, what is the story? And I realize I need to work with writers to tell stories because I'm not a natural storyteller.
So, but at the same time, once you grab the story, all your imagery and all your metaphors and all your symbolism is the lush world that you're creating.
Yep. So I can think that way if I have a base of a story written down, even in prose, even in beats, then I know what it is. Because there's a movement, there's change. Nobody wants to watch a movie where everything stays the same.
So let's go to some questions here because we seem to have a bunch. But for both of you, it's a great question. Who are your greatest influences artistically, and how have they influenced your style?
Sarah, you go first.
Sarah.
Oh my gosh, you know, that's such a heavy, deep question. My influences are all over the place: painters, writers, filmmakers, activists, politicians. But
Name 10.
Say what now?
Name 10 of them.
How about two?
I'll give you two. You know, as a filmmaker, I'm very, very fond of Sidney Lumet. I think Sidney Lumet was incredible because he didn't call his films films, he called them movies. And he was a man of the people. He was very much about telling stories that someone could go and watch. They didn't have to have a college degree to watch his movies, but his movies dealt with Shakespearean themes. And he was
Making Movies. Read that book, Making Movies, Sidney Lumet. Every person watching this, buy it. I don't care if you're experimental or whatever, buy that book.
That's a great book.
Absolutely. Well, we can trade off. Mark, you go.
Trade off. Stanley Kubrick, compositionally. Peter Greenaway, painter, filmmaker. David Lynch, tone, surrealism. William Burroughs, writer, ideas, cut-up theory, concepts. Jenny Holzer, text artist. words as image, as language.
I
Those
could
are,
throw in, I could throw
those
in
are the
Jane
forms of
Campion.
them.
I love Jane Campion. The way, you know, if you look at the piano, she told a whole story with no dialogue, but it was so visually lush and so emotional that it was a challenge. It was almost like she threw down the gauntlet to how can you make a film that's doesn't even have words, you know, amazing.
I mean, contemporaries, I love Jonathan Glazer. Under the Skin is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Mulholland Drive. I love Paul Thomas Anderson's movies, although I could never
David
make
Lynch.
one like it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like Chris Nolan. I mean, I get inspired all the time. Last year, I loved Lean on Pete and Mustang, and I'm constantly inspired by artists and composers, and I mean, just there's a plethora of stuff to make you like engage.
There's a great series right now by Damien Chazelle that I'm devouring called The Eddy that is so well made. I don't know if you've
I
dug
love
into it
Damien.
yet.
I met him years ago. Great kid, great guy, great serious young artist, and a
Yes,
great person.
Whiplash. His film Whiplash was
Great
incredible.
movie. Great movie.
Another question. What's the most important thing a director needs to know? So maybe give us 3 things.
Say thank you. Be polite. Treat everyone equally.
Very smart. Exactly. Mark?
Yeah, those of course. Yes, you're Ted Hope, great producer and executive exam at Amazon, told me one time, the budget is the aesthetic. So if somebody says you have $20,000, design the best piece you can around $20,000. Don't say, I want to make this thing and it costs $5 million when you don't have the reason. So just know what you're going to make. And if you dream the dream, don't give up your dream, but kind of know what your tools are. Don't give up. Don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. And as my mother said, there's 31 flavors of Baskin Robbins. That's why they're just opinions. If people don't like something, you know, big deal. It's like you have to be the first audience and believe in yourself, and you know you have to like your movie, but also you have to, again, in a movie thing, respect your audience. You know, when you show movies in focus groups, right? They ask 2 questions: were we bored, and what was confusing? And you can make an art film, and Tarkovsky can make a film, Richard Donner can make a genre movie, but like, where were you confused? And it's okay to be confused or unsure. Last year at Marienbad, great. Like, I was confused as shit, and I've seen that movie 5 times. But if you're drawn into it, it feels right, right? So you're not bored, you're not confused, but not everybody watches the same film the same way. Right. I walked out of Clerks years ago. I know Kevin Smith. He's a great guy. I hated the movie. I still hate it. I will not watch that movie. You can't make it. You're not making hamburgers. Inarritu said that. You got to make your own dish, and you got to be your own most honest audience.
Mm-hmm. And if you're bored, everyone else will be bored too. Make sure you don't bore yourself.
Make sure you don't bore yourself.
Good. And so, what is the sort of main mistake you see filmmakers make, regardless of experience? Sort of on the lines what we're talking about.
I can talk about being a director that I've been guilty of, but I'm not any longer, and I've seen other people be guilty of, is when you're dealing with actors, talking too much, explaining, over-explaining. Your job as the director is to support, guide, and stimulate. So if you can walk up to an actor and say 2 words and she or he will say, got it, you just shh and let them do the work. It's like working with an editor. You don't talk and edit to death. you say, let's try it. And you both immediately know if it works or not. If it doesn't work, you both look at each other and go, that doesn't work. Don't spend half an hour discussing a cut. Just do it. So, yeah.
I had done made a lot of videos and commercials and docs, and worked with talent, even commercials, before I did my first movie. And I learned on that one that, like, see, all actors are different. Some need to be spoken to, some like to talk, some need just a hug, some need a pat on the back, some need a kick in the ass. Cameron Crowe told me, he goes, don't be their best friend, be kind of a good, a benevolent father figure, right? So because you have to kind of guide all of these people. I did a TV episode early on in my life with James Earl Jones, and James Earl Jones and Jeffrey Wright were doing this 9-minute, 9-page scene. And James Earl Jones has like a 6-page monologue that had 2 halves. And all I wanted him to do was like take a bigger breath between the 2. All I would have said now is like, James, between the 2 big pieces, just take a bigger pause, because I don't want to cut in that time. I want to stay with you. I must have talked for 10 minutes. You know, I have to direct, and I have to, and he goes, in his Darth Vader voice, he goes, son, I've worked with a lot of directors. You didn't have to use so many words to tell me that you just wanted me to take a bigger pause. He smiled at me with his James Earl Jones smile and walks away. And I was like,
he took you to school. He took you to school.
Cool. And
that's
still
the
learn.
perfect thing. Yeah.
Another time I do a pilot, cut 2 years later, and I'm weird, and I'm like, I could show Rhoda Mitchell a painting of a Francis Bacon painting, and I could show it to her, and she goes, got it. In the same scene, an actor named Anson Mount. This was in a TV pilot, and I'm like abstract and all over the place, right? And he looks at me, he goes, give me an action to play, right? He just wanted me to give the actor a direct action to play. He didn't want a gobbledygook. He didn't want abstraction. He didn't want theme. He didn't want Francis Bacon. He just said, tell me what the fuck to do. Great, I learned. But how to direct him is different than how to direct Rhoda, or how to direct the 18-year-old kid who was just like so overwrought. And it's this big crying scene. You're like, I had learned from Tim Robbins, just because it's their big scene and they want to cry doesn't mean it's going to be the scene. Let them get it out of their system. The big pent-up dramatic scene is often, the second take is often the best one.
Good to know. Good to know. So, so we've come to the time. We are done.
No!
You guys are amazing. I know we could go on with this for hours, but thank you so, so much, Sarah, for being such a brilliant, intuitive filmmaker and leader, and Mark for just being groundbreaking in your artistry and inspiring to all of us.
I will tell people who watch, if they have a specific question that they really want answered, if you go to my website, creatively called markpellington.com, which has all my work and process and everything, there is a place where you can email me. And if you email me a question, I will get back to you. As long as you're nice and kind, I'll, if you ask me a serious question, I'll give you a serious answer.
Thank you both for being so gracious.
And Liz, thank you so much for organizing this and being so supportive of the arts and so fantastic with your students and everything. And Mark, I have admired you for years. I'm so happy that you came aboard.
I am very proud of you for your not giving up.
Thank you.
You made a great piece, and make more. Just keep making them. As you say, they're only movies. And everybody should get, seriously, even if you're like a weird stop motion animator, get the Sidney Lumet book, get the Elia Kazan article off the DGA, copy your heroes, steal from people, because it'll never be the same it'll always be yours, but be inspired by your heroes and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so thank you, New York Film Academy, for giving us this platform. Thank you, global audience. Next week, we will have creative visionary Anka Malatinska, who is an award-winning, amazing forefront of female cinematographers. And thanks so much. And everybody be safe.